Clare Cooney. I am an actor and filmmaker. I am currently in Los Angeles. I only moved here a year ago, right before all this insanity befell the world. I was in Chicago for 7 years prior to that, so I consider myself a Chicago filmmaker and actor as well. And I am born and raised in Detroit, or just outside Detroit. It's a little town called Southfield, Michigan. So I directed a bit in college. I directed a musical, and I directed a scene from Rabbit Hole. Woman, why am I not aware of kind of what I'm consuming? And, you know, I already wanted to direct before that, but that was kind of a nice kick in the butt to be like, there's no one who's going to invite you to be a director. There's no one who's going to invite you to make stories from a female perspective. Like, you have to kind of just like do that yourself and believe in it in yourself to do that. And so it was almost kind of like my lack of awareness about women in my field, kind of a big inspiring moment for me to actually pursue it as a career outside of just acting. Because I think I started off as an actor, I'm definitely focused on character-driven stories and relationship-driven stories, which I think sounds obvious, but like not every filmmaker works that way, I don't think. And I think because I also had my experience was rooted in theater, like that's very conversation based and very relationship based and very like based on the moment. And like if I see a film and like there's a weak link in terms of the acting, I just check out because I'm like not I'm not believing it then at that point, you know. So for me, definitely really grounded storytelling and relationships and human-based stuff and the way we communicate and kind of where communication falters in the course of like human relationships. All that kind of stuff is really inspiring for me. What's funny is for someone who loves theater and connections and relationship and conversations, like my first short film didn't have much of that at all. That being said, I think it's a very relationship-based film and a very like tension-based film, and it has to do with like the energy going on between these two characters. It's about a woman's kind of psychological health and processing of this traumatic event that happens to her and kind of what happens afterwards. Another director might have focused on like the action of the moment of like the traumatic event that happens, like the head slam, and like really like made the whole moment feel really like violent. My focus is more about like what was going on in the characters' eyes and kind of how they were processing things. And then I think a way in which that like film's different than theater is like in theater, if there's tension going on, generally it has to be spoken to. Like if there's tension in the room, it's going to be mentioned, or it's going to be. You have to find a way to make that clear for the audience if it's not said. For film, like you can be on someone's eyeball and then you can be on someone else like watching them, and like so there's actually a way to communicate on film that you can't communicate on the stage. It's like, where do you want the audience to look right now? Well, you can decide exactly where you want them to look. The building of those relationships, or like the creation of a certain mood or the creation of tension for a scene isn't always verbal in film. So I think it's like that same quality I enjoy about theater in terms of relationships. I was watching a show recently in which a character is supposed to be having like a mental breakdown. In the book, we get to hear his inner thoughts and we get to kind of hear why he's having the breakdown. It was deeply unclear to me, even who already had read the book, it was deeply unclear to me why he was having a breakdown, what he was thinking. And what he was thinking in the book is extremely interesting and very empathetic and worth hearing. And if it was a play, I could picture it being theatrically, like him freezing in the light and and then him speaking his thoughts. It would have been really cool to play with in a theatrical setting. What that power feels like is it can be really exciting when you get it right and when you feel like you like nailed the tension, and then it can feel really like I missed an opportunity, or because I chose this, I lost this. Like I think there's just like different decisions you have to make. It's hard because you're doing the shot lists and then you're on set and you're filming it, and then you're back in the editing room and I'm an editor, and sometimes I'm like, darn, if I'd only gotten a shot of this would have been the perfect thing. And that's just the reality of filmmaking. And to some extent, that's kind of just like, as an editor, that's like an invitation to be more creative. It's like, okay, well, we did a shot, so how can we create something that feels like that, and like you're challenged to rearrange your thought process about it. strong female character, not in the cliche way. Strength in the writing of the character. She doesn't need to kick butt. She doesn't need to be like a badass who is like a warrior. She just needs to be complicated and fully fleshed out. She can't just be like the woman who comes in and is like, can I help you with something, sir? Okay, bye. You know, like she's a complex character. When films don't have that, I'm kind of like, you're missing out on a breadth of humanity that you're just like not tapping into. Yeah, like I think that I at times I make decisions that are super weak or are like submissive or are rooted in fear or rooted in doubt. And that makes me human, because I also have a side of me that is extremely confident and confrontational. Or if we show women as only side characters or as like lead superhero characters, then that's actually diminishing, like that's actually not super feminist, because like we show men in like all sorts of different lights. Like there can be a huge range of different characters for men, and so there shouldn't only be a couple different character choices for women. In terms of my acting style, like people were always like, I remember one time I was performing in a play and a character was supposed to come in the room and I was supposed to be surprised, and I think my reaction was like, and the person was like, you're supposed to be surprised. I was like, that was me being surprised. And they're like, no, you should be like, oh! You know what I mean? Like, and so I realized I wasn't necessarily great for theater. Of course, for Chicago theater, that's not the case. Chicago theater is very grounded and small and real. I was never a huge fan of table work. I mean, I was and I wasn't, like to an extent that it helped to answer questions you had about the characters or mine some kind of depth about the script. And the director sits down with the actors and they kind of parse through the script, and they sometimes they can like analyze every line and belabor every line. And if we're doing Shakespeare, then I understand why we have to do that. Like, all right, let's get it on its feet. In theater, I always felt like there was a week or two of too much rehearsal. Like 2 or 3 weeks of rehearsal, and then you go to previews, and so you basically are like off book in front of an audience, finding the world of the script. And actors sometimes are just so stressed out, but I like love it. So much of it is based on the relationship the actors have with the audience. I never like to be belabored, so I think a one-day rehearsal is like my preference always. You cast the right actors, you shouldn't have to like dig too much or work too much. It has forced me to write more. It's actually really great, because there's not that much else we can do right now. Because I think I'm an actor and director first, and an editor second, and then like a writer third. Like I just don't. I have, I think, the skills to help me, like when a friend sends me an idea, I can help them collaborate to create the script that they want. Someone said to me like, is Runner your first thing? It did so well. And I was like, well, yeah, because that's because I threw out like so many different things beforehand. And I don't know if that's the right way to do it. I think it's equally good to like shoot things and explore and play. But for me, it's almost like I can't put the money or time into it if I don't 1000% believe in it. And if I'm having doubts about a plot or a storyline or I'm just like, eh. The final thing I'd say is that I'm writing scripts that are like more pared down. They're like, next script I want to do is 2 people having a conversation, and it's like, it's one location-ish. Like our humanity is really like put up in front of a microscope, and the way we interact with each other and the way we treat each other is like really, I think, I'm finding that is like really strong in all the work I'm writing right now. It's really about human beings, like one-on-one kind of thing. I'm thinking what will be the most possible work to make the soonest, which is small casts and small crews. Like whenever I walk into like a new space, I'm like, ooh, cool to shoot a short here. Like I very quickly am drawn to a certain space or place, and I'll see something. Sometimes almost see a shot, and then I'll think, like, is there a story here? And I'll just like let that image of that place and those people I imagined kind of like rattle around my brain for a few weeks, and like maybe it's something there and I'll jot down ideas, or maybe there isn't something there. Even mentally in Chicago in the winters, I shut down. Like it was really tough for me, and thankfully here it's not nearly the same problem. So yeah, I think it just happens more here. I think that there's just more. I think I'm really inspired. I always have been inspired by the outdoors. I prefer to be outside. Sometimes I'll just hear something, a friend will say something to me and I'm like, that's a quote from a movie. You know, like those things, I latch on to those things. And I think dialogue can be tricky to write. So as much dialogue from my real life as I can kind of steal and adapt. There's also, like, in some ways I've been more inspired. We hadn't seen each other for a week and we got back down from the hike and we had like 4 different ideas. Like it was almost like we were both in a more reflective or like pensive or thoughtful place. So therefore we were paying attention to potential different leads for ideas for a short or a series. Thanks, Allie.
You're so welcome.